I was 54 when I met Charles Whitmore. He was charming in that old-school way, well-dressed, confident, and polite to a fault. The kind of man who still pulled out chairs and opened car doors. After 2 failed relationships and 1 grown daughter who had long since flown the nest, I had nearly given up on the idea of romance. But Charles, with his silver hair and warm baritone voice, changed that. He was 61, a retired architect who now consulted part-time, whatever that meant. He'd been married once before. "It ended amicably," he said, a little too quickly. He had no children. "We tried, it just didn't happen," he told me once over dinner, his gaze fixed on the candle flame rather than my eyes. At first, it felt like I'd been granted a second chance. He took me to art galleries, jazz concerts, and quiet restaurants where the waiters knew him by name. He seemed generous, thoughtful, and after only 7 months, he proposed with a modest diamond ring and a heartfelt speech on a lakeside bench. It was perfect, until it wasn't. A week later, he brought up the prenuptial agreement. "It's just a formality, sweetheart," he said, handing me a neatly printed packet with a gold paperclip. "I've been through 1 divorce, and I just want to be cautious. You understand?" I didn't, not really. But I signed it. I told myself love was more important than money, that I wasn't marrying him for what he had. He reminded me often that he had worked hard to build what he owned, and I just didn't want to seem greedy. So I smiled, tucked the papers into my desk drawer, and tried not to let it fester. But something shifted. It was subtle at first. Charles stopped asking about my day. He canceled dinners last minute. His phone was always face down. I told myself I was overthinking. I always had a tendency to worry too much. My ex-husband used to say I imagined problems where there were none. Still, something didn't sit right. One Thursday, when he said he had a consultation downtown, I found his laptop still open on the kitchen counter. I'm not proud of what I did, but curiosity has a way of turning into something else when you feel like your gut is screaming at you. In the personal folder, tucked between photos of vacation homes and sailing trips I had never heard him mention, was a spreadsheet. It listed account numbers, transfers, balances. One account had over $320,000 in it. It was dated 2 months before he proposed. That night, I asked him directly, calmly, without accusation, "Charles, what's this savings account?" He didn't flinch. He smiled. "Honey, it's just a backup plan. You know, just in case." Just in case. That was when I knew he wasn't planning a life with me. He was preparing for a life after me, and he would need that backup plan. He really would. For the next few days, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, his words echoing in my mind. Just a backup plan. It wasn't the money itself that hurt. It was the clarity. The realization that Charles was protecting himself from me, not with me. That he didn't trust me. And worse, maybe he never intended to. I started to replay every moment from our relationship in reverse, searching for signs I missed. And there were plenty. He never let me handle bills. Said it was easier if he just took care of it. He kept financial conversations vague, as though they were too complicated for me to grasp. I'd offered to contribute to the wedding costs once. He'd smiled and said, "Let's keep things traditional." I thought it was romantic at the time. I started asking quiet questions. His ex-wife's name was Linda. I only knew that because I once caught a glimpse of a framed photo that had been shoved into the back of a drawer. A woman with cropped blonde hair standing on the deck of a sailboat next to a younger Charles. I never asked much. He always said they ended things maturely, that it was a phase of life they both outgrew. But now I wanted answers. I called my friend Denise. She's an old friend, the kind who knows people. Her husband is in real estate and knows just about every divorce lawyer in town. I told her the truth, all of it, even the parts I was ashamed of. She didn't gasp or judge. She listened. Then she got quiet. "Let me make some calls," she said. 3 days later, she invited me over. I sat at her kitchen table while she slid a printout toward me like it was contraband. "Linda didn't just walk away," Denise said softly. "She got nothing, not even the house. She filed first, and suddenly he had all his money tied up in trusts she couldn't touch. Her lawyer tried to fight it, but it was airtight. She moved to Nevada last year. Works part-time at a library now." I just stared at the paper. A copy of the divorce summary. No alimony, no property. Linda Whitmore walked away with nothing after nearly 20 years of marriage. He planned that too, I whispered. Charles had learned how to build legal armor, and now I'd walked right into it. The prenuptial agreement wasn't about protection, it was about control. I wasn't his partner. I was an investment risk. That night, I waited until Charles fell asleep. Then I went to the den and opened my own laptop. I started searching for financial advisors, divorce attorneys, anything that would give me power without tipping him off. This time, I wouldn't walk away with nothing. I didn't cancel the wedding, not yet. Instead, I threw myself into the preparations with a new kind of determination. I baked a smile onto my face and nodded through tastings, fittings, and menu decisions. Charles was relieved. He'd sensed I was moody lately, and I assured him it was just stress from planning. He accepted that explanation easily, too easily. I began to notice how often he preferred me quiet, agreeable. The moment I started expressing doubts or needs, he shut down or changed the subject. My heart ached at how much I had overlooked. I kept the mask on. Every moment I played the part of the eager bride-to-be, I felt a little more control return to my hands. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was acting. For the first time in our relationship, I was watching him instead of hoping he was watching me. Denise introduced me to a woman named Marla Kellerman. She used to work for one of the biggest family law firms in the state before opening her own practice. When I met her in the back corner of a quiet cafe, she looked me in the eye and said, "If you want to walk away with what's fair, we start now, before you even think about saying I do." I handed her a copy of the prenup. She read it once, twice. Then her brow furrowed. "This was drafted by someone experienced," she said. "He left no spousal rights, no claim to shared assets. If you marry him, you get what you came in with, nothing more. You'd even lose your claim to half the house if your name isn't on the title, is it?" I shook my head. She sighed. "We'll have to be careful." We agreed to take it slow. No rash decisions, no confrontations. I would start making copies of documents, bank statements, insurance policies, investment records, anything I could discreetly access. Marla gave me a list. Back at home, I kept playing the role. Charles had a dinner meeting with a former client that Friday. I didn't ask questions. I just smiled and kissed his cheek before he left. As soon as the front door closed, I opened the locked drawer in his desk with the spare key I'd quietly pocketed a week earlier. There was more than I expected. Multiple folders labeled with initials I didn't recognize. One of them had travel itineraries, a condo lease in Palm Springs. He'd been wiring money monthly to an account under the name Rachel Thornton. The name didn't ring any bells. I scanned the email printouts paperclipped to the back. They were messages from a private account I hadn't seen before. The last one chilled me. As discussed, everything will be finalized by May. After that, it's just a matter of timing. She'll sign anything. My name was never mentioned, but I didn't need it to be. I closed the drawer, locked it again, and sat down in the silence of our shared home. This wasn't just about money anymore. He had a plan, and I was just a piece of it. The name Rachel Thornton followed me everywhere that weekend. I whispered it to myself while folding laundry, testing how it sounded. Young? Old? Mistress? Business partner? I didn't know. But I needed to. Fast. Marla was calm when I called her Monday morning, though I could tell she heard the panic in my voice. "You found a name. That's good," she said. "Now we trace it. Do you have any dates? Documents? Email addresses?" I scanned and sent everything within the hour. Later that day, she called me back. She's not his relative, and she's not a business associate. Not publicly, anyway. I had a PI pull what we could on her. Rachel Thornton, 38, recently signed a short-term lease in Palm Springs under a trust name connected to Charles's holding company. My stomach twisted. She's divorced, no children. Last known employment was as a travel coordinator for a private yacht charter firm in Florida, Marla continued. She vanished from public records around the time Charles proposed to you. "So she's waiting," I said, numb. "Yes, and being funded," Marla added. "The wire transfers suggest she's living comfortably and quietly." That night, I sat across from Charles at the dinner table, watching him eat as if nothing had changed. He complimented the roast chicken I'd made and asked if I'd remembered to confirm the florist. I nodded, smiled, even offered to double-check the deposit. Inside, I was calculating. I had to find out if my name appeared on any legal property. The house, the joint checking account, the insurance policy. I'd been trusting, too trusting, and Charles had weaponized that trust into silence. I began keeping a log, something Marla recommended. A full journal, private, handwritten, not just of suspicious actions, but everything: tone, conversations, times he left the house, anything that might prove intent later. 2 days later, the first fracture appeared. Charles got a call while we were watching television. He muted the volume and stepped into the hallway. His voice was low, serious, but one word slipped through the door: Palm. He returned smiling, but stiff. "Work call. Former clients being fussy," he said, sitting beside me and pretending to care about the show we were watching. But his fingers tapped anxiously on the armrest. That night, while he slept, I checked his car. In the glove box was a printout from a hotel reservation, Palm Springs, booked under a corporate rate, starting the day after our scheduled honeymoon. I sat in the dark living room until sunrise, clutching that paper. He was planning to disappear. The wedding was 3 weeks away. I could barely stand to look at the invitations without shaking, but I kept the charade going. I told myself I was buying time, not just for myself, but for whatever truth still needed to surface. Charles had grown oddly warm again, doting even. He brought me coffee in bed, suggested we book a spa day together, kissed me in the hallway for no reason. It was the kind of affection that makes outsiders believe you're lucky. But now I understood it differently. It was guilt. Or maybe a pre-departure ritual. Make it pleasant enough to numb the conscience. I called Marla that Monday and told her everything I'd found. The hotel printout, the odd hallway call, the new wave of false tenderness. She listened in silence. "You need to delay the wedding," she said at last. "Or cancel it outright." "I can't," I replied. "Not without tipping him off. He still thinks I'm in love with him." "Then use that," she said. So I did. That week, I suggested we add a will to our wedding planning. "It's just practical," I said sweetly. "What if something happens to one of us? I don't want the other to be left in the dark." Charles froze for half a second, then smiled. "Of course, darling. That's very responsible." But he never brought it up again. Not once. I asked to meet his financial advisor, claiming I needed help setting up a retirement plan. He told me he didn't want to mix finances until after the honeymoon. I offered to add my name to the utilities. He declined. "No need to overcomplicate things," he said. That was when I knew. He wasn't planning to share anything. Denise came over the following Saturday to help me dig deeper. She was the only one who knew the full story. While Charles was at the golf course, we went through every drawer, folder, and file we could find. In the basement storage closet, behind old tax returns, we found a lockbox. Inside was a stack of old photographs and a bundle of letters. They were from Rachel, dated as far back as 2 years ago. One stood out. "I know you need time. I know she has to believe it's real. But please don't forget what we talked about. You promised this wouldn't take forever." Denise looked at me with wide eyes. "She knows about you. She's part of it." I felt the heat rise in my chest. I had been a placeholder, a distraction while Charles cleaned the slate and prepared for a second life. I took photos of every letter, every envelope. Then I put everything back exactly as it was. This time, I didn't cry. I just made another entry in the logbook. The weight of the truth sat quietly in my chest as I watched Charles move through the house like nothing was wrong. He hummed when he shaved. He folded laundry in the living room. He brought me roses the next morning, wrapped in brown paper and tied with a ribbon. "Just because," he said with a smile. And I smiled back. But something had changed in me. I wasn't afraid anymore. Marla and I met again at her office the following Monday. I brought a flash drive with photos of the letters, financial records, and copies of Charles's travel bookings. She scanned through the files silently before finally speaking. "If we can link these transfers directly to her account," she said, "we might be able to challenge the prenup or delay the wedding with a legal motion, especially if fraud is involved." "But he hasn't technically done anything yet," I reminded her. Not yet, but if we move too late, it won't matter. That night, I searched Charles's office again. This time, I wasn't looking for more secrets. I was looking for timing, a clue about when exactly he planned to disappear, and I found it, a printed checklist tucked into his day planner. At first glance, it looked like a generic to-do list. Meet with Brad Thursday, safe deposit box Friday, travel docs, print copies, storage unit key. Brad. The name was unfamiliar. I photographed the list and added it to the log. The next morning, I played dumb. I asked Charles if he needed help organizing anything for the wedding. He waved me off. Everything's handled, sweetheart. You don't need to worry. But I was already calling Denise. She dug up information on Brad. It didn't take long. He was a financial planner in Glendale, quiet, discreet, and apparently a close golf buddy of Charles. The same man he'd been having those client dinners with. Marla reached out to her PI. Within a day, they found that Brad had recently opened a joint trust account, under Charles and an undisclosed secondary party. It wasn't me. It wasn't even Rachel. It was listed under a generic corporate shell. He's hiding the money, Marla said flatly, or preparing to. We were running out of time. I realized something else then. Charles wasn't being careful anymore. He thought I was blind, that I'd fallen for the roses and back rubs and whispered reassurances. He believed I would walk down that aisle smiling, oblivious. He didn't realize I'd already chosen my dress. Not to be a bride, but to play the part, and wait for the curtain to fall. Charles asked me to go dress shopping again that week. I want to see you glow, he said. Pick anything you want. I don't care about the cost. I almost laughed. The irony of his generosity stung like vinegar on an open wound. I chose a dress that shimmered with understated elegance. Not because I imagined walking down the aisle in it, but because I wanted him to think I did. Marla had good news that afternoon. We traced the Shell Corporation, she said over the phone. It's registered in Delaware under a business trust umbrella. But here's the interesting part. It's been used before, by a couple during a divorce proceeding, to hide assets from one spouse. Rachel and Charles? I asked. No, she replied. Different names, but it tells us something. Brad's firm specializes in these kinds of setups. We were close. I could feel it. That night, while Charles showered, I checked his briefcase. Inside, I found a small sealed envelope. My name was written on the front in his handwriting. I didn't open it. I couldn't. Not yet. But I took a photo and placed it back exactly where I found it. Whatever it wasn't love. 2 days later, I followed him. He said he was going to his final suit fitting. I waited 20 minutes, then drove toward the tailor he'd mentioned. His car wasn't there. I parked and waited. 30 more minutes passed. Nothing. Then, just as I was about to give up, I spotted him, turning down a side street. I followed at a safe distance and watched as he parked in front of a quiet office building. The sign outside read Bradley and Hartwell Financial Services. He was there for the money, not the wedding. I didn't get out. I didn't need to. The confirmation was enough. That evening, I called Denise and asked if she still had the name of the event coordinator handling the venue. Why? She asked. Because I want to make a small adjustment to the guest list, I said calmly. And I'd like to make sure the photographer arrives early. There's going to be a very special moment I want captured. She was quiet for a long beat. You're not just canceling this, are you? No, I said. I'm giving him exactly what he planned for, and then I'll take what he never saw coming. The next day, I opened the sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. In the event that you read this, something has likely gone wrong. Please understand, this was never personal. I wanted to believe we could be something real, but I couldn't take that risk again. You're strong and you'll move on. You always land on your feet. No signature, no apology, just the kind of farewell a man writes when he thinks you'll vanish quietly. But I wouldn't. Not this time. The final week moved like a chess match, each day a careful step toward a calculated end. Charles was more relaxed than I had seen him in months. His guard had fully dropped. He hummed Sinatra while shaving and left his laptop open more often. He even asked if I wanted to take ballroom dance lessons for the reception. I played along, smiling at the thought of us gliding across the floor while the truth sat heavy between us, waiting for its moment. Marla gave me the green light 2 days before the wedding. "We have enough," she said. "Letters, financials, photographs, and intent. If he tries to retaliate afterward, this becomes a case of calculated fraud. But if you want to go public, this is the time." I nodded. "Then we go public." We confirmed the venue had a private sound system and that Denise's son, Ethan, could control the mic discreetly. I booked the photographer to arrive 30 minutes early. I didn't need glamour shots. I needed documentation. On the eve of the wedding, Charles took me out to dinner. Candlelight, linen napkins, a toast to forever. He leaned across the table. "I'm proud of you. I know this wasn't easy for you after what you went through with your ex, but you've trusted me. You've been patient." I swallowed. It's all I've ever wanted. Stability, honesty, safety. He smiled and reached for my hand. "And you'll have all of it. Soon." I excused myself to the restroom. Once inside, I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, everything would change. The morning of the wedding was cool and bright. I sat in the dressing room, already in my gown. Denise zipped me up and held my shoulders. "You sure about this?" she asked. "Yes," I said, steady. "I won't walk into this blind, and I won't let another woman fall into the same trap." Guests arrived. Laughter filled the air. Charles was waiting at the altar, suited, smiling. The photographer snapped shots of him fixing his cufflinks. Denise gave Ethan the signal. He slipped into the audio booth. I stepped into the aisle. Music began. But just before I reached the front, the sound cut. Then a voice filled the space. Not mine. Rachel Thornton's. "You promised this wouldn't take forever." Gasps. Another line. One of Charles's emails. "She'll sign anything." Then his letter. "You're strong. You'll land on your feet." I turned slowly. All eyes were on him. His face, frozen, pale. The room fell silent, and I spoke. "I loved a man I believed in, a man I trusted with my heart and my future. But what I found was deception, manipulation, and a plan to erase me the moment the paperwork cleared." I looked him in the eyes. "You were right about one thing, Charles. I am strong. Strong enough not to marry a man who never intended to stay." Then I handed him back the ring and walked away. The moment I stepped out of the venue and felt the crisp air on my skin, I knew it was over. Not the pain, not yet, but the pretending, the shrinking, the silent endurance. Denise caught up to me in the parking lot, tears in her eyes. She didn't say anything, just wrapped her arms around me. I didn't cry. Not then. I was too steady, too calm. I had spent months unraveling a lie, and in the end, I had walked out with my voice intact. The fallout began within the hour. Charles didn't chase me, not at first. He stayed inside, cornered by confused relatives, angry friends, and a photographer who had captured every expression on his face. Denise's son had already uploaded the audio to a private server, and Marla had a copy secured in case Charles tried to dispute what happened. By evening, I received the first message from him. It was short. "We need to talk. You humiliated me. This wasn't necessary." I didn't respond. The next day, Marla filed the preliminary petition for damages based on emotional fraud and intentional financial deception. It wasn't a slam dunk, but it was enough to freeze the trust account temporarily and subpoena Brad's firm for its records. Charles called again. Then Rachel called. I didn't answer either one, but Rachel left a voicemail. "You could have handled this quietly. You didn't need to destroy everything." I listened to it once, then deleted it. Denise brought over groceries the following afternoon. She'd already heard that half the guests had forwarded the wedding audio to their families. Some were furious. Others sent me quiet messages of support. One woman, Charles's second cousin, wrote, "You saved someone else from being next. Thank you." It meant more than she knew. I spent the next week meeting with Marla, organizing my financial documents, and cutting every remaining tie to Charles. I changed my locks, closed the joint bank account he never used anyway. I had the utilities placed fully in my name. Every act, however small, felt like reclaiming a little piece of myself. but the hardest part came in silence. There were mornings I woke up and still felt like I had something to prepare for, like I needed to stay alert, one step ahead. But there was no more game to play, just my life, waiting to begin again. One morning, I sat at the kitchen table, looking through a stack of old photos I hadn't touched since before Charles. Pictures of me at the beach, laughing with my daughter when she was younger, my hair a little messier, my face softer, my eyes clearer. I realized how far I had drifted from that version of myself, but I also realized I wasn't her anymore. I was someone new. Someone who'd seen the edge of manipulation and turned away. Someone who said no in front of everyone and meant it. It took 3 weeks for the legal paperwork to clear. Brad's firm eventually complied with the subpoena. Once Marla reviewed the financial transfers and the trust structure, she confirmed what we suspected. Charles had funneled over $400,000 into the Shell account, and Rachel Thornton had been listed as an authorized party for disbursements starting the week of what would have been our honeymoon. It was enough. Charles, through his attorney, offered a quiet settlement. He wouldn't contest the emotional damages if we agreed not to press further or take the story to the press. Marla looked at me and asked what I wanted. I didn't need headlines. I wanted peace, and I wanted proof that he couldn't do this again. So we agreed, on our terms. The trust was dissolved. The funds were frozen. Marla added a stipulation. Any future financial arrangements between Charles and romantic partners must disclose cohabitation terms and assets prior to legal union. He signed, not because he wanted to, but because he had no other choice. Rachel vanished from the record shortly after. Her condo in Palm Springs was vacated. I never heard her voice again. And I didn't need to. Some stories don't need to finish in confrontation. They just need to end. I took a trip. Just me. No destination in mind. I drove north along the coast with a packed bag and no plan beyond following the sunrise. I stayed in a small inn overlooking the ocean. No one there knew my name. No one asked if I was okay. I was just another traveler with salt in her hair and silence on her breath. In the mornings, I walked the shoreline barefoot. In the afternoons, I read paperbacks from the innkeeper's old bookshelf. In the evenings, I sat with a glass of red wine and let the past drift out with the tide. I didn't think of Charles. I didn't think of Rachel. I didn't think of revenge. I thought of how long it had been since I was simply me. When I returned home, I repainted the front door, a deep sage green. I replaced the curtains in the living room. I rearranged the furniture, not because it needed to be, but because it felt like starting over. Denise brought fresh flowers every week. Marla invited me to a small luncheon where she introduced me to other women who had left similar stories behind. One of them looked at me and said, "You did what most people only dream of doing. You walked away with your spine straight and your eyes wide open." I didn't need validation, but it felt like healing. My daughter visited the following weekend. She hugged me tight and said, "You seem lighter." "I am," I told her. I didn't tell her about the pain behind it, or the long nights, or the quiet rage, or the fear. She'd find those things on her own path, in her own time. All I could do now was live, not cautiously, not guarded, but freely, deliberately. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again, and that was enough.